This is Collin Williams. He is attending the University of Alabama, pursuing a degree in marine science and biology with a minor in geology. He has been living down south in Charleston this summer, working for the South Slough National Estuarine Research Reserve. And one of his goals this summer was to improve his guitar proficiency and master 5 new songs.
Well, hello everyone. Like Haley just said, my name is Collin, and I spent the summer working at the South Slough Reserve, working on several biological monitoring projects, some of which included investigating the settlement rates of the native Olympia oyster and the distribution of juvenile fish in the South Slough Reserve. But today I'm going to talk to you about the invasive European green crab. If you look on the map, the top left-hand corner of my slide, you'll see the blue, which is the green crab's native range. It ranges from northern Europe to parts of northern Africa. But these little guys have gotten busy traveling the world. They've also invaded Australia, southern Africa, South America, and unfortunately the east and west coasts of North America. So why does this matter? Why should we care that green crabs are invading our waters? Well, through previous invasions, we've found that these guys can decimate local ecosystems and have negative impacts on shellfish and other industrial practices on coastlines. Right now, populations in Oregon are low, but with warmer water conditions from higher El Nino events and warming climate, we're expected to see higher numbers of these guys in the future. Those two pictures right there are of 2 male green crabs caught in the same area, but as you can see, their abdomen color is pretty variable. So there's a lot of misidentification. A lot of people think these are baby Dungeness and might accidentally kill them. They range from this orange color on the right to this yellow on the left, and some of them are even dark green. So for my work, I sampled 5 different sites through the South Slough estuary bi-weekly. I set 160 traps and caught over 2,100 crabs. That takes a long time to process. So I used 3 different trap types to investigate which was best for capturing the green crabs. The 3 types are fakui, or a mesh trap, seen on the bottom picture, a minnow trap, which is at my feet, kind of hard to see in the top picture, and a green box wire trap. A CPUE, or catch per unit effort, was calculated to account for varying trap numbers and trap types. So my research goals when starting this project were first to record the distribution and size of the population of green crabs within the South Slough Reserve. Secondly, I wanted to determine which native crab species were found in areas with these invasive species to determine which native species were most at risk. And lastly, I wanted to provide baseline data for future studies to come in and see what the green crab populations were like in 2016 in the South Slough Reserve. If you look in the bottom left-hand corner, you will see a zoomed-in picture of my field site. The right picture is a map of the entire Coos Estuary. I was lucky enough to come down to the South Slough Reserve at a time when my mentor was collaborating with a local high school teacher to survey the green crab populations in the northern estuary. So while she was doing that, I conducted simultaneous surveys in the South Slough Reserve, and I was able to compare our data a little bit, even though our methods were slightly different. What you can see is that we have a presence of green crabs in the higher estuary, the higher marsh, and in the main channel kind of connecting Coos Bay proper and higher in the South Slough Reserve, we don't see as many green crabs. So moving on to my specific results, this first graph, I'm sorry they're small, you might not be able to see it, but the left axis, the y-axis for the green bars, is catch per unit effort, and this is for all green crabs, only green crabs. And the left bar is for the fakui, or mesh traps. The middle bar is for the green box traps, and the right bar is for the minnow traps. And what we see is that the fakui by far captured more of these crabs for our effort. So in the future, when students, professors are trying to conduct studies or eradication procedures, fakuis will be the best traps to use. Secondly, thanks to Sylvia Yamada, who decided to join us today, we have long-term data at Jonay Slough, which is one of my 5 sites, ranging back to 2008. So years moved from 2008 to 2016 on the x-axis, and CPUE is on the y-axis. And you can see that populations have fluctuated a little bit, and now we have a huge spike in 2016. So the highest number of green crabs at this specific site. It's hard to draw many conclusions off of just one site with not the exact same sampling effort throughout. But what we're seeing provokes motivation for future exploration and investigation. The far right graph, what you'll see again is CPUE on the y-axis, and across the x-axis are varying carapace widths. So the smaller sizes we will find closer to the y-axis, and farther along the right you will find bigger sizes. And the green crabs are displayed with the green bars, and purple displays the Dungeness that I caught along with these green crabs. Though this is only one site and a small amount of data, what I've noticed at the muddier substrate sites with green crabs present is a missing size class of the Dungeness. So if there were green crabs ranging from the smallest to the largest, you would see a green bar right next to the purple bar. But because we don't see green crabs and Dungeness at the same size in certain environments, it leads me to believe that there's possibly a more complex relationship between their distributions and interactions. Of course, more data and further investigation would be needed to make a concrete conclusion. And there are other factors and characteristics of the two species that might lead to this distribution on different substrates. But this is my work so far, and if there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer them.
Great job putting all this together, and as you know, the monitoring information, in particular the repeated monitoring back over the decades, is really valuable to assess the context of this year. So after working on this intensively this summer, in your opinion, have the populations reached that point where some type of eradication or control action is required?
Well, first off, eradication is hard, especially with devastation who broadcast spawns. It's hard to sift through a bunch of plankton and pull out all their larvae, or even if you kill all the adults, they still have planktonic larvae in the water. From what I can see, I would agree. I'm not a fan of any invasive species, so yes, I think an eradication plan should be in effect, especially with the interactions they have with Dungeness, which is a huge recreational and commercial fishery here in Oregon. If these guys come through the Pacific Northwest like they did the Northeast, we could have some cascading effects that would not be good. Yes?
A couple questions. Really interesting results. We've been seeing a lot more green crabs in other estuaries as well. Did you find 2,100 green crabs or crabs in general?
I should have specified
Okay.
that. I found 86 green crabs
Okay.
in all of South Slough in my short time here over the summer. But 2,100 crabs, I measured carapace width and sex for all of those. That's why it took so long to process. But yeah, most of them were hairy short crabs, and there's not that many green crabs. I'm sorry, I should have specified that.
And one more question. Do you still have, did you destroy them? Do you still have them frozen, or did you return them back to the estuary?
I have half of them frozen and half of them in a dumpster somewhere.
Okay, great. All right.
So yes, you know, they were disposed of. So if you want them, you can drive down to Charleston and you can have a bucket of frozen green crabs.
Okay, thanks.
Any more questions? All right, well, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it.